It's easy to think like, okay, well, Laura, you're serving people with developmental disabilities. Of course, that's motivating for you to
Yeah.
do the thing. And I think what I've seen in terms of hardship is it's the goodness on the other side of the grit. It's like, at what cost do we give up? We actually give up something within ourselves, and it's the goodness on the other side of the hard.
My
And
goodness.
the goodness on the other side of the hard, it is resilience, it's connectivity, it's pushing through and recognizing you've gotten through it so you can go through something hard again. It's the people.
Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Lead to Greatness. We would like to introduce you to our special guest.
And if this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps get the word out to great leaders and entrepreneurs like yourself. Please help me welcome Lori with Stories and Growth of Resilience. This is Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
So, hey there, I'm Laura Hope Whitaker, and a little bit about me. I serve as the CEO of a program called ESP. We are an organization with a mission that exists to create transformative experiences for people with disabilities and their families, changing communities for the better. And I kind of have a non-traditional leadership story, so I'm excited to talk a little bit about leadership today and excited to be here with you.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk a little bit about that non-traditional leadership story. Why would you consider it non-traditional?
Yeah, so I grew up in the city of Atlanta. My family was involved with a variety of nonprofits at the time, and volunteering was very much a way of life for our family. I had people who were different from me, that looked very different, that lived very different lives, that were around our dinner table. And my parents really believed in building community around us. So when I went to the University of Georgia, I started volunteering because that's what I knew to do. And now, as a mom of three typical children, I like to remind myself and remind my friends that, what we do today is what our kids will one day display. And it definitely was the case for me. So I went to college, city girl, out to Athens, Georgia, and started volunteering. And I actually heard about ESP through my ex-boyfriend's sister introduced me to it. And although he is no longer in my life, I think people come and go for a reason, right? And introduced me to ESP. I started volunteering as an 18-year-old. A year later, at the time, we were very small. We served 40 participants and their families in a small 1,200 square foot building.
Wow.
And that was nearly 20 years ago. The founder was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when I was 19.
Wow.
And so as a sophomore in college, I took the helm as the executive director. And there was really no other choice. The founder's husband and daughter interviewed me and said, good luck. You've got a $50,000 deficit to raise, hire all your friends, run a summer camp for kids with special needs, and somehow finish your sophomore year of college. So that is how I entered into the world of leadership. And 20 years later, I've definitely done all the things that I probably shouldn't have done. I've learned what not to do more than I've learned what to do. But I think over the years, as our organization, we have a total of over 70 employees when you include all of our Joyristas. We have almost four locations. We have thousands and thousands of square feet buildings and ball fields and playgrounds and large capital campaigns. And we serve a little over 1,200 families now. So the organization has grown and scaled over the years, but sometimes I'm still that 19-year-old girl who took over the nonprofit as a leader who had no idea what she was doing back then.
That is, oh my goodness, that is insane. 19 years old, taking over a business. Then when you're talking about the scaling aspect, I definitely want to talk a little bit about that scaling. So let's talk about when you first got into it. At 19 years old, you took over this organization and you grew it from that to what it is now. Let's go back to, if you could get into a time machine and talk to that 19-year-old young lady, what advice would you give her?
There's really kind of three things, and I think I would remind myself or tell myself, bring into awareness what I did have. And The first was a partner in my faith. I really, throughout the years, some of the business decisions that we have made didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it was the next best thing to do.
Yeah.
And God really kind of lit up the path along the way. And
Yeah.
so I think recognizing I'm not doing it on my own, that I have a partner, and that God has been my partner the last 20 years has been something that I had to realize that I had, but I had that. I think the second is mentorship. Mentorship has been a part of my journey all the way through. One of the benefits of being 19 is I couldn't fool people into thinking that I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right. Like I had to be humble because I
Yeah.
didn't know what I was doing. And I had to surround myself with people who did know a little bit more than I did. And still 20 years later, mentorship is a big part of who I am, my own personal growth, but within the fabric of our organization, mentorship is really, built in. And then I think the third thing is grit. I think grit is almost a lost art in a lot of ways. And I learned grit from the people that we serve. We live in a comfortable world that loves comfort and easy and quick. And when you are working with families that have a child with autism that doesn't sleep, or a child with cerebral palsy, or fed with a G tube or a tracheotomy, you don't get to tap out. You don't get to ghost. You don't get to give up. And I think back then when I was 19, I was so motivated by our families and providing a place for them that it internally built this resilience inside of me to grow my capacity. And so 20 years later, I have my own family and my capacity is changing as I get older, right? But I grew that capacity at a young age when I could. So now as an adult, I have a much larger capacity to give of my time and my energy. And I think I had that when I was 19 and didn't necessarily realize it. So those are kind of the three first things that come to my mind.
Wow, that is amazing. Those are some knowledge bombs you just dropped on us. You said a couple of things I really want to dig at. You talked about the situation and what you've seen, the families that you were dealing with, because I believe some people are, flaky or throw in the towel too quick because that why is not big enough.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the why is the thing, right? It's easy to think like, okay, well, Laura, you're serving people with developmental disabilities. Of course, that's motivating for you to do the thing. And I think what I've seen in terms of hardship is it's the goodness on the other side of the grit. It's like, at what cost do we give up? We actually give up something within ourselves, and it's the goodness on the other side of the hard.
My goodness.
And the goodness on the other side of the hard, it is resilience, it's connectivity, it's pushing through and recognizing you've gotten through it so you can go through something hard again. It's the people that went through it with you that you are connected and bonded to. And so it's like less about getting through the hard thing, right? And it's like, what's on the other side of the hard thing? And what are we at risk at leaving off, on the table if we don't push through? I remember specifically one significant time in my career. So we were operating out of this like 1,200 square foot building. We had this wait list that was 100 deep. I had it on an Excel spreadsheet on my computer and just refused to tab out of that Excel spreadsheet until we could do something about it. And it was right after the recession. People were not donating money. There's more nonprofits per capita than any other city in the United States, and in the city that we're in.
Just real quick, you say recession, you talking about 2008 or
2008? Yeah,
okay,
back in 2008.
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
Which recession? That's an important clarification, right? And here we are again, right? I remember thinking, it was 2010, small building, and there was one of our participants was on the wait list, and we got him in for 1 week, and the next week his best friend was able to come. We were not able to get him in. He had a single mom who worked a job at a manufacturing plant, and his mom had to leave him at home because she had to go to work, and there was no care for him. He was 18 with Down syndrome. And I will remember it like it was yesterday, even though, at this point it's been 15 years. I was sitting, doling out medication, organizing camp, trying to, do my best as a leader. And I got a phone call from the sheriff's office, and he started telling me, I realized that one of our campers had passed away. And I started thinking about all the medically fragile kids that we serve, and unfolded that it was this one individual who was on the wait list, and he had died in a house fire while his mom was at work and while he was on the wait list at camp. And that was a defining moment where you talk about things being bigger than yourself. It was like, it made no sense in the world standards for us to raise $3 million in 3 years to build a new building that would eliminate the waiting list. But when you think about the Hulk, that's his name that we called him. When you think about the Hulk and you think about the families on the wait list, it made every sense in the world. And it was the next right thing. And that was the grit that got me through the recession, the number of people that said you can't raise $3 million in 3 years, the number of really challenging times where people looked at me like we were crazy. And we raised $4 million in 3 years, and we built a building, and we eliminated the waiting list in one fell ribbon cutting, one fell swoop. And so that kind of has happened multiple times throughout our organization. And it's getting through that, the grit and the goodness on the other side of the grit, that I think is motivating for me.
That story, Hulk, is that something that continued to motivate you 15 years later?
Yeah, I think about it in terms of, like, if you choose to look all around, there are people waiting. And it might be someone waiting for a friend or a meal or a dollar or care for their child. But it's like, if you choose to look, there are people waiting. And if you choose to look, there's resources. And I think as the organization has grown, here I am in Northwest Georgia, totally on a different side of the state. And tonight we are bringing donors together for a building here. And it's just like it was back in the day, where it's like, we just bought a 24,000 square foot building here in this area to serve a totally different part of the state because there are people waiting. And I think that idea that connecting resources of those who are waiting with those who have resources and being able to see the exchange between the two is really continuing to be motivating for me. And we hear it all the time. We have families call in all the time who need the support. And the coolest part is the donors need it too. They just don't always know it at the time. And it's so good to watch them realize they actually need us more than
needed. Expound on that.
I mean, I think, as humans, we want two things. We want purpose and community. And sometimes when you're really successful at the things that you do, you can tend to isolate yourself from those two things, purpose and community. And so one of the coolest parts of my job is watching people with disabilities and their families need purpose and community. So we have a social enterprise that gives them jobs, and there's purpose and community with the work we do. But then on the other side of it is those that are providing the purpose and community actually find purpose and community themselves. And so it's this beautiful kind of cyclical exchange, absolutely transformative to watch. And that's fun because it's unexpected for donors. They come in and they think we're just asking for a check. And we're like, no, really? We want your time. We want you to fall in love with our mission. Then if you feel compelled, write a check, but no, you're going to be changed for the better just as much as our participants and families are going to be changed for the better. And that is really, really fun to be a part of.
This is so good. You said something, and going into the scaling aspect of this whole journey, like you said, you're doing it again right now. I kind of want to look at it from the perspective of mountains. And the reason why I say mountain, that's just kind of an idea I had, right? So in my mind, through my journey as a leader, through my journey in business, it feels like a roller coaster. But then when I really look at it, I'm like, no, it's not a roller coaster. I'm really going higher and higher. And it's like a mountain, then a taller mountain, then a taller mountain, and a taller mountain. But every time you hit the peak of that mountain, it feels like you're going down before you go back up. And I used to call it the roller coaster, but I'm like, oh, if I look back 5 years, I'm not where I was 5 years ago. I'm not where I was 10 years ago. It's not a roller coaster. And I want to say, from your perspective on that mountain view, because you said over and over again, it's like you hit this spot, you celebrate, but then there's another problem. And then you have to win a game or whatever we want to call it. Tell me your experience from that first time, that very first time when you finally climbed and reached the top of that first mountain when you were 19 years old to now,
Mm.
how does that mountain feel? I mean, maybe the first time doubts in your mind, like, man, did I make a mistake? And then you kind of realize this is just a part of what it is.
Yeah. Gosh, I love that analogy, and I'll tell you why. So I think my first little like mountain, which when I look back, it looks like, a little molehill, right? It was like when I was 19, it's like raise $50,000. You need to raise $50,000. We have a deficit. When you can raise that, you can start paying yourself, hire your 40 staff members, run a summer camp. And it was like, how am I going to finish my sophomore year of college, not fail out, raise $50,000? Like, what do I do? I don't even know what a P&L sheet is. Like
Yeah.
what is QuickBooks? I have no idea what that. And so the learning curve was immense. And so I just started talking to everybody that I knew. I went to the newspaper and I wrote grants for the first time, and we raised that $50,000. I was like, okay, I was at the top of that mountain. And the minute we raised the $50,000, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to actually like pay the people and do contracts and like do. So then, it went down for a minute, and then it went up a little higher, because then you're talking about HR related things, and you're talking about accounting related things. So I think, as if, that analogy is so good, because two things happen when you start climbing. First of all, when you get to the top of whatever size mountain you're on, the view changes.
Ooh.
It's like you're on top of the mountain and you can see the world in a different way than you did. That's the goodness on the other side of the grid. The other thing it does is it gives you the physical resilience and the emotional resilience to know you can do it, and you're stronger when you get to the top, right? And so you get to the top and you realize, okay, the next time I hit a mountain, my brain is telling me I can do this because I've already done it before. And it's actually going to be good on the other side if I can just it's temporary. I'm going to get to the top and I'm going to love the view from the top, and my body can do this. My brain can do this. My emotions can do this. So as the mountain gets bigger, which for us it has, right? I mean, scaling, we're trying to take, similar to like the Boys and Girls Club or Habitat for Humanity, we're taking our concept and duplicating it into cities, and we're soon going to go out of the state.
Amazing.
That brings all additional challenges to it, right? Once you bring it out of the state from a HR perspective, political perspective, state fund, all those things. So the mountain keeps getting bigger. The important thing as leaders when we grow things is that we keep looking back and see the perspective of like, I've been here and I know I've been here and I know how to do it and I know I can do it again and climb a little higher. So I think that's been definitely the case for me, and keeping that perspective, I think, is really important.
Lori, another life bomb. That is so amazing. I think that a downside to leadership, sometimes we have the blinders on and we don't tend to look back on where we came from.
Yes.
And people are giving up and throwing in the towel. Look at what you have accomplished already. And I mean, that looking back, I think that's some definitely great advice.
And our people need that too, right? I think that's one of the things I've realized in my deficit as a leader. I'm so forward thinking. Like I'm already thinking about the next 5 years and 10 years. But my people aren't that way. They're not wired like me, and that's okay. But they need to stop and be able to look back and see what we've accomplished together. And when I don't do that, I notice that their energy and there's no moment to refresh and say thank you and be grateful and look back to see what we have done before we then gear up and do the next thing. So transparently, I'm not great at that as a leader, and I'm working on it to really make sure that I'm refueling my people and giving them an opportunity to rest. We as humans, I think, are kind of wired just to keep doing instead of really being. And
humans like you.
Thank you for clarifying. Not all humans. The other kind of interesting thing about me that I've learned in the last 2 years is I've started practicing ancient Jewish tradition Sabbath. I took a sabbatical. We implemented a sabbatical policy. It was a strategy to kind of help our team be able to take a break and then re-energize them for the next 5 years. And so I think Sabbath on Sundays has really helped me become much more of a reflective human because I turn it all off. My family turns it all off. And we read and we play games and I write in my journal a lot. And that's just trained my ever-going mind, my ever-thinking mind to just like have a practice of stopping.
Us, the listeners, getting to know more about your organization and what you do, like what's the process?
So our goal is to provide transformative experiences that people with disabilities and their families don't have the opportunity to fulfill. So we fulfill our mission in 3 ways. We have an after-school program, we have a summer camp program, and provide family support. So next week, we're taking 55 families to the beach. And these are families, many of them who've never been to the beach or been on vacation, and they get a buddy with them the entire time. And we've rented 15 beach wheelchairs, and every family gets their own little college concierge that's with them the entire time. And the third way in which we fulfill our mission is through Java Joy. And that's our social enterprise that I mentioned. That's the purpose part of our mission. So once an individual ages out of school, they have the opportunity to become a joyrista, is what we call them, not a barista, but joy plus barista equals joyrista.
Yes.
And it's kind of a catering model. So it's a coffee cart that goes into for-profit businesses and organizations, large high rises, giant things like conferences and things like that. And we serve coffee, but most importantly, we serve joy and unexpected joy. Our coffee hug and joy is the kind of theme of Java Joy. And really what that's about is it's about giving people a positive neural connection interacting with someone with a disability. So if you've never had an interaction with someone with autism, or you've never hugged someone in a wheelchair, or you've never had a conversation with someone with slow speech that may have Down syndrome or an intellectual disability, it can be really intimidating, right? Because we, as humans, we are intimidated by what we don't know. And our hearts can't love what our brains don't know. And so what our brains need is this positive neural connection. And that's what Java Joy does, is it gives people like, oh, I didn't realize I could hug someone in a wheelchair, or man, I just interacted with someone with autism and I didn't say the wrong thing, or I didn't. And so what that's doing is it's training and teaching and educating those of us that don't have a disability on how to interact with people with disabilities, creating a more inclusive community. So that, and at the same time, you're paying to have Joyristas work, which is pretty awesome, because 87% of adults with disabilities who want and can work are unemployed. So it's kind of, it's both and. So in terms of getting involved with ESP, there's a lot of different ways, as simple as following us on Instagram, like liking our stuff and following us on Instagram. We're at ESP Inc. and Laura Hope Whitaker. You can follow us there. And Java Joy, we have 3 different Instagram accounts. Sometimes engagement in that way is really helpful. Also, our website, espyouandme.org. You can find out information about events that we have. We have a statewide Georgia event if you're in the state of Georgia. We fly our Joyristas on business trips. So we're going to Colorado in June. We just came back from London. We got to hang out with Tom Holland, who's Spider-Man in the Marvel movies, and he flew us out there, and we got to hang out with them. So we go on business trips and provide transformative experiences for businesses through Java Joy. So you don't have to be in the state of Georgia. And then also just financially supporting. I mean, sometimes people don't have time and they don't have the ability to book Java Joy, but you can fund it, and you can be a part of that exchange of giving what you do have to the best of your ability. And we have some pretty amazing things in the pipeline, like how to expand Java Joy nationwide, a universal accessible camp where kids in wheelchairs get to sleep on the top bunk. Like, we have some big visions for our future, and we are going to need people to help us fund that. So again, it's a two-way street, and we really believe in transformative experiences for our donors as well. You can also check out my website, laurahopewhitaker.com. I have newsletters every 2 weeks. I'm talking about one of my friends, Leah, who went from orphanage to children's author, and the grit and resilience that she has as someone with cerebral palsy. And so I like to talk about the people that we serve, but also what we could have the opportunity to learn from. So check out my website, and then Instagram, Laura Hope Whitaker, and ESP Inc. and Drive with Joy as well.
Awesome. Laurie, this was amazing conversation on today. On behalf of
you made it easy.
Yes. Thank you. I would take that compliment. You really dropped some gems on us today, and we're so thankful for that. On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, I want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you. What an honor.
We want to thank you for joining us today on the Lead to Greatness podcast. So remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace.